respect their privacy in any way. I searched the entire plant, and she wasn't there. After that, I lost interest. That's my hobby. I'm looking for her, and I've made a science, even an art out of it. I guess, well, it's certainly more than just a hobby in some ways. I've searched in museums, coffee shops, bars, stores, churches. I dress any part, act any role. You see, I've studied my hobby very, very carefully. Here, an example might help you understand. One night, a Friday night, I cruised through Larry's Cantina, a jock bar, lots of guys with thick arms, thicker necks, and short haircuts. The place smells like sweat, stale beer, and hormones. Big women, usually blonde with huge breasts and bulging legs, hang out at Larry's. But Amazons didn't interest me. I was looking for her. Sweating bodies filled the room. It took me 5 minutes to push my way across. A clump of bouncers dressed in bright red t-shirts weaved slowly through the weekend crowd, rubbing their way across the packed flesh, the veins on their faces bulging out and their huge arms pumping slowly. It took the Red Snake minutes to reach the fight, but the brawlers had no room to punch each other anyway. A ballet like two good arm wrestlers straining against each other, so much human power, locked, motionless. Even a jock bar has poetry if you look at it right. Then I saw her, talking with two other girls at the bar. She stood under the widescreen TV while two nameless football teams fought it out above her. Not a jock girl. She looked good, obviously exercised, but she had something harder-edged about her. I knew right away the kind of guy she'd go for, and fortunately I had everything I needed in my van. I went out to the parking lot and put on a loose-fitting open shirt, dropped a gold medallion around my neck, strapped on a fat Rolex gold watch, and slipped on some loafers and a pair of California casual slacks. I went back in and drifted by her. I gave her the look. She was interested. I pulled out my wallet, flashing my gold and platinum plastic cards, and popped out a thick wad of crisp hundreds. You got to do it just right with that special flair that says you've got new money, easy money, and you don't mind spending it. But I'm well rehearsed. It's my only hobby. She watched me while pretending not to, and her body unconsciously straightened, thrusting her hips forward and her breasts upward. Those kind of girls always arch their backs when they see money. It excites them. I turned sideways and flashed her my developer smile, the one that says, "No problem, baby. This is where the action is, and you can have a piece." It's corny, I know, but it works. I started talking to one of her girlfriends, meanwhile giving her the right amount of shiny smiles. You've got to have this casual, high-speed way of talking, not anxious, but like you're driven by some inner volcanic desire. Then I gave her a special private nod and winked to let her know that she was in on an important secret. They always think there's some conspiracy involved in making money. I gave her another smile. She smiled back. "Are you from Southern California?" It's a great line, implying that you're not and that you think in broad geographical strokes. In short, that you're a man of the world. And of course, one of them asked the obvious question, "Aren't you?" "No," I said, "I'm from Sausalito. That's my home when I'm not traveling. And I keep a flat in London for when I'm over there. I'm just down here to put together a deal." I looked around the bar. "Seems like a nice place. What's there to do around here?" "Nothing," said one of the girls. They always say that, no matter who you ask or where. Department store clerks, fast food workers, barflies. They're always waiting for someone to take them away on some adventure that they saw in a magazine or on television. Anyway, I went on and on casually about the ins and outs of the real estate biz, the deals written on napkins on the floors of title companies, the telephone calls. I had my portable phone with me, the lines of credit, and the movie stars who buy limited partnerships, and then I shrugged. That's how I have fun, I guess, making money. I never have time for much else. I don't even have time to spend it. I excused myself and went to the restroom. It's a good strategy when you're trying to split off one girl from the others. You have to pick the right moment to let her make the arrangements with her friends, to tell them to go home without her. Also, I had to make a phone call to reserve a room at the Silver Regent, the most expensive hotel in the county. I ordered champagne and a bucket of ice and oysters, crackers, cheese, and fruit, all to be delivered at just the right moment. These operations require careful timing. Women often mistake timing for fate. You might ask where an electrical engineer gets the money for all this. Well, I don't spend this much every time. It depends on the girl, and I live frugally. You'll understand eventually. Well, I returned to the girls. They had worked it out. Her friends were more restrained, slightly resentful, while she was all ears and eyes just for me. Just to be sure, I added the coup de grace. I let out that I had just leased a Learjet for tax reasons and because I needed to be places now, not just when the airline scheduled it. I had decided to form a traveling office and I needed another executive secretary, someone who wanted to learn the real estate game. Now, the more experienced and intelligent a woman is, the more indirect you have to be. That way she'll discover an idea for herself and believe it. I could see the machinery working, the subtle changes in her facial muscles. By the way, Jill was her name. She had a boring life in a law office. It wasn't hard for her to figure it out. I asked the girls if they had ever been to the Cloud 9, that's the top of the silver region. Then invited them using the vague term you, but I looked only at her. One of her friends started to answer, but got Jill's elbow before she could finish. No, she'd never been there, but she'd always wanted to go. Well, what could I say to that? I gave the bouncer at the door $10 and told him to order me a cab. She turned around and waved goodbye to her friends. They looked at me wistfully. They could have stabbed her. Notice that she never left me alone with them. Oh no, she wasn't that naive. We had a couple of drinks at the Cloud 9, danced a few times, talked of her dream of doing real estate development and that she'd love to learn from an expert. I pretended surprise. In the middle of our discussion, the bar closed. I had timed it just right. I told her that our having met was a strange coincidence. Remember, timing is a good substitute for fate, and that I had an idea but didn't want to talk to her about it until I knew more about her. So we continued the discussion. In my room service had come through with a champagne. She kept talking and her mouth got dry, so I kept refilling her glass and listening attentively, but really the issue had been decided hours ago. It was just technique now, just keeping the bubble of intimacy from popping. You know, seducers are really liars, like any salesman that thinks only of making a sale. And you can't lie for very long before you begin to lie to yourself. That's what gives a seducer that weak quality, but hey, I'm no seducer. This is just my hobby. Does that make you feel better? Oh, you still don't like me? Well, you're just jealous. You'll understand later. She wasn't bad in bed, as if I had the slightest interest in that. Once I found out that she wasn't the one, and as soon as we started making love, I knew that it wasn't her. That's always when I know, no matter how many times I'm disappointed, I'll never get used to it. But despite the pain, I'll never give up my search. As soon as we finished, I knew what it was about this woman, this Jill, that had interested me, that made me think it was her. It's always like that. In this case, it was her ears. I had to have those ears. No, this is not a horror story. This is a true story. I'm hiding nothing. I didn't take out a razor and slice off her ear and maybe send it to some painter. Hardly original. So relax. I got out my camera, took shots of her ears and face,